David here, and welcome to our third video of the series. So again, the idea is just to develop intuition around how to use R for programming and for data science, especially in healthcare. So in this case, over here, we will recap a little bit on what we talked about earlier. So we talked about variables, we talked about objects, and we saw how they work in R. So don't spend too much time cramming them, but you can just try and understand just what is happening for now. So in this video, we will start by, for example, rerunning these variables. So I will just highlight the variables and press run. So once I press run, you realize that the values are stored over here. Okay, and any error that will happen will be reported here on the console. So one important thing I'd like you to notice is that the line number 13 did run my variable without any error, but wasn't recorded over here. So we don't have number 15 as a value over here. So that's something to be aware with R. When you start a variable name with a punctuation, it won't record in the value section. Okay, so let us look at something else that can make it not, for example, appear over here. So, for example, when we start the variable name with a number, so for example, number 1, immediately I type that, you notice that we have an error already. And let us try and run this line with the error. So when you press run on that line, you can say saying unexpected symbol in one my variable. So that means that this value over here is an unexpected symbol. So the only way it can happen is if you remove it and then come over here at the end, then press run, and then it has worked. Okay. So something again you realize is that when we come over here, let me just show you. When you come over here, you notice that when we put hyphens also in the variable name, they are not allowed. So when I come at the end, I press run, you notice the object might not found. So the code doesn't report this as an error the way we saw over here when you put number 1, but when you run it, the hyphen interferes with this variable name and it will throw up this error. So that's something to be mindful of. Okay, great. So now let us dive deep and try to understand some of the complex things that are there before we go into datasets and handle datasets and data frames and all that kind of stuff. So in this case, we covered an object, and once a particular value is assigned a variable, for example, like this, it becomes an object. So objects can also hold complex data structures like matrices, lists, and data frames. And that's what we'll be talking about in this this video. Okay, so we will start with what we call a vector. So a vector is the most fundamental data structure, and it is used to store an ordered collection of elements that are all of the same data type, that is homogeneous. So for example, in this case, how we represent a vector in R, we type, for example, over here, my vector. So just type with you, my vector. So again, this is the variable name that we will be assigning to our vector. Once we assign that variable name to a vector, which in this case is the most fundamental data structure, it will be stored as an object in R. And then once it is stored as an object, we can be able to do a number of functions on it. Okay, so let us do that. And then in order for us to provide a vector in R, we normally do this. And for example, put numbers. So let me just put 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. That. Then when you run the code, you see we have my vector, and then we have this list over here. So one thing you can appreciate is that this is different from the way these others are, and that is very important for us. So I will touch about that later on as we continue with the video. So let us do something interesting. Let us try and run my vector, and then let us say multiply by 2. Okay, and then you press enter just to give it space, then come over here, and then we run this line of code and see what happens. So you can see over here, we get my vector times 2, and we get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. All right. So as you notice, what happens is that this 2 is multiplied by multiplies each number within this vector that we provided. Okay. So a vector, as I mentioned, a vector is the most fundamental data structure. So once you have that data structure, we can do some couple of operations in it. So in this case, this is just simple arithmetic multiplication, where we can access each element within this vector of ours, and then we can do a couple of things in it, like multiplication and other kind of things. So we will see how this is important later on. Great. So that's on vectors. Next, we have a matrix. So a matrix now, it's a two-dimensional homogeneous data structure used for storing elements of the same data type. It can be either numeric, character, or logical data in a rectangular layout of rows and columns. Okay, so let us look at an example of a matrix. So for matrix, we will say my matrix, which is the variable name we decided to go with, and then we will say matrix. So this is a function. So once I type matrix, you can be able to appreciate what comes up, right? So let me just highlight that again. And so when you type matrix, you provide that function. And in this function, it says it can take different kind of arguments. Okay, don't stress about what I'm saying, but we will dive deep. So just to make you aware of the terminology that will probably come up in the future. So it says a matrix takes a function, can take a data is equals to NA, I'll touch on that, N row which is equals to 1, N column is equals to 1, and then it goes on and on. So in this case, it typically says we can provide how can I say, yeah, we can provide the data that we expect to be filled inside this matrix. So when you say 1 to 9, we basically say we want this matrix of ours to be filled with numbers from number 1 to 9, all right, with 3 number of rows and 3 number of columns. Let us run that and see what happens. So over here, you see something happens. Now we get what we call data, and then we get my matrix, and then we say integer 1 to 3, 1 to 3, and then we get the values 1 to 9. So you realize that this is different from what we had here. All right. All right. Okay. Let us try and run the multiplication operation that we did here with the matrix. So just copy paste that one, and then do multiply by 2, and then run that. You see what happens? Now we can be able to appreciate how these two-dimensional data structure come into play. So over here, it was just one line. Over here, we have 1, 2, 3, the number of columns, 1, 2, 3, the number of rows. And because we've multiplied each value within the matrix by 2, you realize the first one was number 1, so number 1 was multiplied. So 1, 2, 3, it was multiplied by 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's how, again, how R indexed the values. It did not go like 1, 2, 3, 4. It did not go row wise. It went column wise. So for the first column, we had number 1 to 9. The second column, number 1 to 9. No, sorry, number 1 to 3. The second one, number 4 to 6, and then the third one, number 7 to 8. So that's a matrix. Great. So let us cover something else. Let us look at a list. So a list, on the other hand, is now a highly flexible, one-dimensional data structure that can store various types of objects. So something very important here is that a list can store various types of objects like numbers, strings, vectors, matrices, and data frames, or even other lists under a single name. So let us provide a variable for our list and call it my list. So for this case, we'll say my list, and then we'll type the word list. So once we type the word list, we open up bracket, which is called, we will call our function, which again, I'll just talk about it later, don't worry. And then we assign values that we want to be represented within our list. So for example, in this list of ours, we have name of a person called John. John is age 30 years, and scores, I don't know what the scores are for in this case, but he scores something, of, something of values around 85, 90, and 95. Sorry about that. So let us run that. Great. And then now that is stored. Again, now notice how this is stored differently here in our data, within our environment. So within our environment, when you have data, and then when we hover over here, we can see my list is a bit different from what the rest has. So for example, when I come here, my matrix, you can just see it is not giving me even how many bytes, for example, that has been, for example, showcased over here. So that's something very important. So when we click here, you see now I'm able to get the values of what my list has. So for example, name was John, age is 30, and he has the scores across three values, 85, 90, and 95. Great. Okay, again, just internalize and see how these things happen, and then we'll dive into them one by one later on. Great. So lastly, over here, just want to mention what we have now, a data frame. So data frame is a bit now complex than a list. So in this case of data frame, we will provide the function data frame. So all these things have been mentioned, function, like for example, from the matrix, the list, and here now I'm introducing data frame. These are preset functions within the R platform that allows you to carry out some things. So a function normally has what we call, for example, we call arguments within it that we need to provide so that it can be able to fulfill its task. Okay, so within this data frame function, we want to provide a data frame with a column of names, and then you have a column again of age and scores. Again, just something that arbitrary that you can just have there to gain intuition. So when you come at the end, press Control Enter or Command Enter, we get something different. Now, I would like you to notice how different these things appear here. I think that's the main aim of this video. I just want to appreciate how different data structures appear differently on this environment column. So over here, just look at how my data frame appears. So when I hang over my data frame, you can see it is different from when I hang over here in my list. So when I hang over on my list, it says list with 688 bytes, which it's a bit smaller compared to when I hang over here and say data frame with 1248 bytes. And then over here, we have 3 observations and 3 variables. So let us drop down here, and when I click here, you can see what comes up over here. We can be able to appreciate the keys, the how we gave different values for a name, for a age and a score, and they're over here in our data frame. So this is our data frame. Also, when you just press the drop down here, it will be available over here, and it's the same thing over here. So great. So until there, we've covered 4 important things that I just want you to internalize. We've covered how a vector works. That's number 1. We've covered how a matrix works, a list, and now a data frame. So until there, I just like you to again take the video slow, rewatch it, and then try and understand what has been happening over here. And then we will explain them in fully in the subsequent video. Until next time, bye bye.